River Chen stared at his computer screen, watching lines of code blur together. Another late night at the office. At 34, he had built a life that looked normal from the outside. Small apartment, steady job, quiet weekends. But something always felt missing. It's like he was living someone else's life. His coworkers knew him as the guy who fixed problems no one else could solve. He was reliable, smart, but kept to himself. During lunch breaks, while others talked about their families or weekend plans, River usually ate alone, lost in thoughts he couldn't quite explain. The dreams had been with him since childhood. Not nightmares exactly, but something stranger. He would find himself floating in darkness, surrounded by lights that danced like living things. Sometimes he heard voices, but not with his ears. The sounds seemed to come from inside his mind, musical and warm, speaking in a language that had no words. His parents used to worry when he was little. River would wake up talking about the light people and ask when they were coming back. The doctor said it was normal childhood imagination. Over the years, River learned to keep the dreams to himself. Now, as an adult, the dreams still came. It's usually once or twice a month, always the same feeling of being somewhere else, somewhere important. Would wake with his heart racing, not from fear, but from a strange kind of homesickness for a place he had never been. River rubbed his tired eyes and saved his work. The office building was almost empty now, just the security guard and a few other late workers. He gathered his things and headed to the parking garage. Walking to his car, River noticed his phone acting strange. The screen flickered, showing random symbols before going back to normal. He shook his head and tried to ignore it. Technology glitched sometimes, but during the drive home, his car radio started picking up weird signals, static mixed with what sounded like music, but unlike anything he had ever heard. The melody was beautiful and somehow familiar. River quickly changed stations, but the strange music followed him across every channel at his apartment building. River saw his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, standing in the hallway with her dog. Buddy, the small terrier, was usually calm and friendly, but tonight he was acting crazy. Buddy kept barking at the ceiling and running in circles. "I don't know what's gotten into him," Mrs. Patterson said, looking worried. "He's been like this for hours. Won't eat, won't sit still, just keeps staring up at the sky." River looked up. Through the hallway window, the night sky looked normal, but something felt different. The air itself seemed to buzz with energy, like the feeling before a thunderstorm, but stronger. In his apartment, River tried to settle into his evening routine. Microwave dinner, check emails, maybe watch something on TV, but he couldn't concentrate. Every electronic device in his place seemed slightly off. His laptop kept losing Wi-Fi connection. The lights dimmed and brightened on their own. Even his digital clock showed the wrong time. River stood by his window, looking out at the city. Other apartment buildings stretched into the distance, thousands of people living their own quiet lives. Streetlights cast yellow pools on empty sidewalks. Everything looked peaceful. But that strange energy in the air was getting stronger. He tried calling his internet provider about the connection problems, but his phone kept dropping the call. Finally, River gave up and decided to go to bed early. Maybe tomorrow everything would be back to normal. But sleep didn't come easily. River lay in bed, feeling restless and alert. The air in his room seemed to vibrate with invisible electricity. He could almost hear something, like whispers, just beyond the edge of hearing. When he finally drifted off, the dream was more vivid than ever before. River found himself in that familiar floating darkness, but this time he wasn't alone. A figure stood before him, tall and graceful, with features that seemed both strange and oddly comforting. The being's eyes held a depth that felt ancient, like looking into the night sky itself. The figure didn't speak with words, but River understood perfectly. Images and feelings flowed between them. He saw glimpses of distant worlds, civilizations, among the stars, and something that felt like coming home after a very long journey. Then the figure said something that made River's heart skip. Though no sound was made, the meaning was crystal clear. "Soon, River, soon we will meet again. You have been patient, and patient, you have been rewarded. The time of remembering is almost here." River tried to ask questions, tried to understand what was happening, but the dream began to fade. He reached out toward the figure, desperate not to lose this connection. "Wait," he called out in the dream. "I don't understand. Who are you? What do you want from me?" The figure smiled with a warmth that filled River's entire being. "You know who I am, little Earthling? Deep down you have always known. And soon you will remember everything." River woke with a start, his heart pounding. Sunlight was streaming through his bedroom window. He sat up, confused and disoriented. The dream felt more real than his actual life. Every detail was perfectly clear, as if it had really happened. He looked around his normal bedroom, at his normal life, and knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Something was coming. Something that would change everything he thought he knew about the world, about himself, about what was possible. River got ready for work like any other day. But part of him remained in that floating darkness, waiting for answers to questions he didn't even know how to ask. The ordinary world around him suddenly felt like a costume he was wearing, hiding something much more important underneath. As he left his apartment, River looked up at the morning sky. Somewhere beyond those blue depths, someone was waiting for him. Someone who remembered him, even when he couldn't remember them. The day ahead looked normal, but River knew it was the last normal day he would ever have. 3 days passed after River's vivid dream, and each day felt stranger than the last. At work, he made mistakes he never made before. Simple coding problems seemed impossible to solve. His mind kept drifting to that figure in his dream, to those ancient eyes that seemed to know secrets about the universe. On Wednesday evening, River felt a pull he couldn't explain. It started as a gentle tugging in his chest, like someone was calling his name from far away. He tried to ignore it, tried to focus on his dinner and evening TV shows. But the feeling grew stronger by the hour. By 9 o'clock, River couldn't sit still anymore. Grabbed his jacket and car keys, having no idea where he was going. His hands seemed to know the way better than his mind did. He drove through the city, then out toward the hills where streetlights gave way to darkness. The GPS on his phone kept glitching, showing his location in impossible places. Sometimes it said he was in the middle of the ocean. Other times it showed him driving through buildings. River turned it off and followed his instincts instead. After an hour of driving, found himself at the entrance to Bear Mountain Trail. River had lived in this area his whole life, but had never been to this hiking path. The small parking area was empty, except for his car. A wooden sign marked the trailhead, barely visible in his headlights. Something told him to walk the trail, even though it was completely dark. River grabbed a flashlight from his glove compartment and started up the winding dirt path. At the night, air was cool and crisp, filled with the sounds of crickets and rustling leaves as he climbed higher. That strange electric feeling from earlier in the week returned. His flashlight beam flickered, and his phone screen kept lighting up on its own. The further he walked, the more intense the sensation became. River reached a small clearing about halfway up the mountain. It was a peaceful spot surrounded by tall pine trees, with a view of the valley below. City lights twinkled in the distance like earthbound stars. He sat on a fallen log to catch his breath, wondering why he had felt so compelled to come here. That's when the air around him began to change. At first, it was just a slight humming sound, so quiet he thought it might be insects. But the humming grew louder and seemed to come from above. River looked up through the tree branches and saw something that made his heart stop. The stars were moving. What he had thought were stars began to shift and dance across the sky. They formed patterns that pulsed with soft light, growing brighter and closer. River's flashlight went out completely, but he wasn't afraid. Somehow this felt right, like he had been waiting his entire life for this moment. One of the lights separated from the others and descended toward the clearing. As it came closer, River could see it wasn't a star at all. The object seemed to bend light around itself, making it hard to focus on directly. It was roughly the size of a small house, but its edges seemed to blur and shift. The craft landed so gently it barely disturbed the pine needles on the ground. River felt a warm vibration through his whole body, like the feeling of standing next to a powerful speaker, playing beautiful music. But there was no sound, just a sensation of harmony and peace. A doorway appeared in the side of the craft, though River couldn't see how it opened. Soft, golden light spilled out into the clearing, and then a figure stepped through. River's breath caught in his throat. It was the being from his dreams, but seeing it in person was completely different. The ambassador was tall and graceful, with long limbs and features that seemed both alien and somehow familiar. Its skin had a faint luminescence, like moonlight. Unwater, but it was the eyes that River recognized most. Ancient, wise, and filled with a kindness that seemed to reach directly into his soul. When the being looked at him, River felt like he was being seen for the first time in his life. The ambassador didn't walk toward him, but seemed to glide across the clearing. When it was a few feet away, it stopped and tilted its head in what might have been a smile. Then it spoke, not with words, but directly into River's mind. The voice was warm and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Do you remember me, Earthboy? I never forgot you." Suddenly, memories crashed over River like a tidal wave. He was 7 years old again, lost in the woods during a family camping trip. He had wandered away from the campsite, following what he thought was a pretty butterfly. By the time he realized he was lost, the sun was setting and he couldn't find his way back. River remembered sitting by a stream, scared and crying, when this same figure had appeared. Back then, the ambassador had seemed like a magical forest creature to his child mind. It had sat beside him, its presence immediately calming his fears. The being had touched his forehead gently, and suddenly, River knew exactly how to get back to his parents. But more than that, he had felt connected to something vast and wonderful. The ambassador had shown him glimpses of other worlds, other beings among the stars, and promised they would meet again when he was older. River's parents had found him walking back to camp, completely calm and unafraid. They asked where he had been, but when River tried to explain about the light person, the adults just smiled and said he had a good imagination. Over the years, River had convinced himself it was just a childhood fantasy. But now, looking into those same ancient eyes, he knew it had all been real. "You waited for me," River whispered, his voice shaky with emotion. The ambassador's mental voice filled with warmth. "I promised I would return when you were ready to understand. The time has come, dear River. You have much to learn, and your world has much to decide." River felt tears on his cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness, or tears of coming home after being lost for 27 years. Everything in his life suddenly made sense. The dreams, the feeling of not belonging, the sense that he was meant for something more. "What happens now?" he asked. The ambassador extended a long, graceful hand toward him. "Now we begin your real education. Your people are approaching a crossroads, and you are one of the few who can help them choose the right path." River reached out and took the offered hand. The moment their skin touched, his world exploded into light and understanding. The moment River touched the ambassador's hand, the world around him changed completely. Not in a scary way, but like stepping from a dark room into warm sunlight. He found himself inside the craft without. Remembering how he got there, the interior was nothing like the spaceships in movies. Instead of cold metal and blinking lights, everything felt alive and organic. The walls seemed to pulse gently with soft golden light. The floor beneath his feet was smooth but warm, like polished wood. River could hear a faint humming that reminded him of his mother's lullabies. "Welcome aboard, River," the ambassador said, its voice still speaking directly into his mind. "I know this is overwhelming. Take your time to adjust." River looked around in wonder. Through what he assumed were windows, he could see the earth falling away below them. But there was no sensation of movement, no feeling of speed or gravity. It was as if they were floating in a bubble of perfect calm. "Are we really in space?" River asked, his voice barely a whisper. The ambassador nodded, its large eyes reflecting the stars outside. "We are traveling to where we can speak freely without the distractions of your world. There is much you need to understand and little time to explain it all." As they moved through space, the ambassador began to share its story. Not through words, but through something much more powerful. River felt images and emotions flowing directly into his mind, like watching a movie made of pure thought. He saw the ambassador's people as they truly were, They called themselves the Watchers, though that wasn't quite the right word in any human language. For thousands of years, they had been observing worlds like Earth, watching younger species grow and develop. "We are not conquerors," the ambassador explained, as images of peaceful, advanced civilizations filled River's mind. "We are gardeners. We help consciousness grow throughout the galaxy, the way a gardener helps flowers bloom." River saw glimpses of other worlds the Watchers had helped. Planets where beings had learned to live in harmony with nature and each other. Civilizations that had overcome war, hunger, and fear to build something beautiful among the stars. But he also saw darker images. Worlds where the inhabitants had destroyed themselves before they could grow wise enough to handle their own power. Dead planets where once great cities lay in ruins, their people gone forever. "Every species reaches a crossroads," the ambassador continued. "A point where they must choose between wisdom and destruction, between unity and division. Your people are approaching that moment now." River felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of moment?" The ambassador showed him Earth, as seen from space, beautiful and blue and precious. But overlaid on that image were others: cities choking in pollution, forests disappearing, people fighting over resources that should be shared. "Your species has developed incredible technology," the ambassador explained. "You can split atoms, change the very building blocks of life, and reach into space. But you have not yet learned the wisdom to use these gifts responsibly." River thought about the news he saw every day. Wars, climate change, people arguing instead of working together. It all suddenly seemed connected, like symptoms of the same disease. "But why me?" River asked. "I'm just one person. I write computer code for a living. What can I possibly do about any of this?" The ambassador's mental voice filled with warmth and something that felt like a smile. "You were chosen long ago, River. Not because you are special in the way humans usually think of special, but because your mind works differently." More images flowed into River's consciousness. He saw himself as a child, not just the moment when he got lost in the woods, but other times too. Moments when he had shown unusual empathy, when he had solved problems in ways that surprised adults, when he had seemed to understand things beyond his years. "Your brain processes information in a unique way," the ambassador explained. "You can hold multiple perspectives at once without becoming confused. You can feel the emotions of others without losing yourself. Most importantly, you can serve as a bridge between our kinds of consciousness." River learned that there were others like him on Earth. Not many, but enough. People who had been quietly prepared throughout their lives for this moment. Each had been visited as children, each had experienced the strange dreams, and each carried a piece of the puzzle humanity would need to solve. "We cannot save your people," the ambassador said, and River felt a deep sadness in those words. "That is not our way, and it would not help them grow. But we can offer guidance to those who are ready to listen." River saw himself as part of a larger plan that had been decades in the making, understood that his feelings of not quite belonging, his strange dreams, his ability to see problems differently, all of it had been preparation for this moment. "What do I need to do?" River asked, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The ambassador showed him images of the other chosen humans. A scientist who had been developing new forms of clean energy without fully understanding why she felt driven to do so. A teacher in Africa who had been bringing communities together in ways that seemed almost magical. An artist in South America whose paintings somehow made people want to be kinder to each other. "You must find them," the ambassador said. "Must help them remember what they learned as children, just as you are remembering now. Together, you will prepare your people for what is coming." "What is coming?" River asked, though part of him already knew the answer. The ambassador's mental voice grew serious. "A choice. Soon your people will face a decision that will determine their future. They can continue on their current path and risk destroying themselves, or they can choose to grow into something greater, something worthy of joining the community of worlds." River felt the craft beginning to move again, heading back toward Earth. Through the windows, he could see the planet growing larger, its blue and green surface looking both beautiful and fragile. "How long do we have?" River asked. The ambassador was quiet for a moment, and River sensed great concern behind its calm exterior. "Time moves differently for your people than for us. But in your terms, You have perhaps a few years, maybe less. As they descended toward the clearing where this all began, River felt changed in ways he couldn't fully understand yet. The ordinary world he had known just hours ago seemed like a distant memory. He was still the same person, but now he carried knowledge that felt both wonderful and terrifying. "Remember," the ambassador said as the craft touched down gently among the pine trees, "you are not alone in this. We will be watching, and when you truly need us, we will be there." River stepped out of the craft and back onto Earth, but he was no longer just an ordinary man living an ordinary life. He was a bridge between worlds, carrying the hopes of both species on his shoulders. River stood once again in the clearing on Bear Mountain. But this time, he wasn't alone. Dr. Rodriguez was setting up her quantum communication device while Kai prepared a circle of stones according to ancient traditions his people had maintained. For thousands of years, Esperanza had painted symbols on canvas panels arranged around the clearing, images that somehow made everyone who looked at them feel hopeful and connected. 3 months had passed since their first contact with each other. In that time, they had discovered they weren't the only chosen ones. All around the world, people were awakening to memories of childhood encounters with beings of light. Teachers, doctors, farmers, musicians, engineers, people from every walk of life who had all been quietly prepared for this moment. The plan they had developed was simple but powerful. Using Dr. Rodriguez's quantum communication technology, they would simultaneously contact every major government, university, and news organization on Earth. But this wouldn't be just a message, it would be an experience. Anyone who received their transmission would briefly feel what River and the others felt when they touched the ambassador's consciousness. "Are you sure this will work?" Dr. Rodriguez asked, making final adjustments to her equipment. The device looked like a combination of high-tech electronics and abstract sculpture with crystalline components that seemed to pulse with inner light. "The ambassador told me it would," River replied, though he felt nervous butterflies in his stomach. "When humanity is ready to truly listen, the technology will work in ways we never expected." Kai finished his stone circle and sat in the center, closing his eyes in meditation. "My grandmother always said that wisdom comes when the heart is ready to receive it. Tonight we open the heart of the world." Esperanza stepped back from her paintings, which seemed to glow in the moonlight. "These symbols came to me in dreams. They represent unity, growth, and the choice between fear and love. Anyone who sees them will understand, even if they don't know why." As midnight approached, River felt the familiar electric sensation in the air. But this time it was much stronger, and he could sense it was coming from all directions. Other groups of chosen ones around the world were performing similar ceremonies, all synchronized to happen at exactly the same moment. The ambassador's presence felt closer than it had since that first night. Through their connection, River sensed dozens of ships positioned around Earth, not to invade, but to witness. This was humanity's test, and the Watchers had come to see the result. "Beginning transmission," Dr. Rodriguez announced, activating her device. What happened next was unlike anything River could have imagined. The quantum communicator didn't just send signals, it created a network that connected every electronic device on the planet. Televisions, computers, phones, radios, even digital billboards began showing the same images that Esperanza had painted. But more than that, everyone who saw the images felt something, a moment of perfect clarity about what really mattered. Brief experience of seeing the world through the eyes of someone who truly loved all living things. River felt the moment when millions of people around the globe suddenly understood. In government buildings, world leaders stopped their arguments and looked at each other with new eyes. In research laboratories, scientists realized their work could heal instead of harm. In schools, children felt excited about learning to take care of their planet. The communication wasn't one way. Through the quantum network, River and his team could sense the response from humanity. It was like feeling the heartbeat of the entire species. And that heartbeat was saying yes to something greater than themselves. But not everyone was ready. River also felt pockets of fear and resistance. Some people rejected the experience, choosing to believe it was a trick or a threat. Some world leaders immediately began talking about weapons and defense. Some groups saw it as the end of their power and fought against it. "It's working," Kai said softly, his eyes still closed in meditation. "But it's also dividing them, just like the ambassador said it would." River watched the real-time responses flowing through Dr. Rodriguez's equipment. Social media was exploding with posts from people sharing their experiences. Some were filled with wonder and hope. Others were angry and frightened. In major cities around the world, people were gathering in the streets, not to protest or fight, but simply to be together. The experience had made them feel connected to each other in a way most had never felt before. But River also saw news reports of military bases going on high alert. Some governments were calling emergency sessions to discuss the alien threat. The choice the ambassador had spoken of was happening in real time, and humanity was choosing both paths at once. "Look," Esperanza whispered, pointing up at the night sky. The stars were moving again, just like they had on River's first night. But now River could see them clearly for what they were, dozens of ships that had been patiently waiting for this moment. They descended slowly, peering over major cities around the world. The ships didn't land or make any threatening moves. They simply hovered there, beautiful and obviously peaceful, making it clear that the choice was still humanity's to make. River's phone started, buzzing with messages from other chosen ones around the world. The same thing was happening everywhere, the ships revealing themselves, while people on the ground made their choice about how to respond. Through the quantum network, Dr. Rodriguez was receiving communications from the ships. The ambassador's voice, calm and warm, spoke to all of humanity at once. "People of Earth," the message began, reaching every person on the planet in their own language. "We have watched you grow for thousands of years. We have seen your capacity for both great love and great fear. Today you have shown us that many of you are ready to choose love." River felt tears on his cheeks as the ambassador's message continued. "We do not come to rule you or change you. We come to invite you to join a community of worlds that has chosen cooperation over conflict, wisdom over fear, and growth over destruction. But this invitation is yours to accept or decline." Around the world, the response was immediate and varied. In some places, people came out of their homes to wave at the ships and welcome them. In others, military jets scrambled to intercept what they saw as invaders. But something beautiful was happening too. The people who had experienced the quantum connection were reaching out to those who hadn't. They were sharing what they had felt, helping others understand that this wasn't a threat but an opportunity. River watched live news feeds showing strangers helping each other, communities coming together to discuss what this all meant, and leaders from different countries calling for peaceful dialogue. Instead of military action, the division the ambassador had predicted was real, but so was the unity. Humanity was choosing both fear and love, and somehow both choices were necessary for what came next. As dawn approached, ships began to withdraw, but not disappearing entirely. They remained visible in the distance, a constant reminder that the invitation was still open. River felt the ambassador's presence one last time, strong and clear. "You have done well, Earthboy," came the familiar mental voice. "Here people have taken their first step toward joining us. It will not be easy, and it will not be quick, but they have begun to choose wisdom over fear. That is enough for now." Dr. Rodriguez was monitoring communications from around the world. "River, look at this," she said excitedly. "Governments are calling for international cooperation. Scientists are sharing research freely. Artists and teachers are organizing peace gatherings. It's like the whole world just remembered what's really important." River looked around at his friends, Kai still meditating in his stone circle, Esperanza adding new symbols to her paintings, Dr. Rodriguez coordinating with other research teams around the globe. They were no longer just for people who had shared strange dreams. They were part of something much larger. "What happens now?" Esperanza asked. River smiled, feeling more at peace than he ever had in his life. "Now we keep growing. We help our people learn to choose love over fear, unity over division, wisdom over destruction. And someday, when we're ready, we'll join our new friends among the stars. The sun rose over Bear Mountain, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. River knew his old life was completely gone now, but he wasn't sad about it. He had found his real family, his true purpose, and a future that was brighter than anything he had ever imagined. Humanity had passed its first test. There would be more challenges ahead, more choices to make, but they were no longer alone in the universe. God, River thought, was the most beautiful thing of all.